called Guide to Web Development with Java, Understanding Website Creation. And it talks about how to deal with um, Java servlets, JSP, and some additional packages that is included in the book. So remember that you can find all the files that we need, including the files for this tutorial, in your Moodle account. And the book site is bitesitebook.com/guide for the new edition. The examples, the one example that I'm going to go over is complex data persistent. We're going to make some changes. We're going to type them. But the idea is that I'm going to explain this example based on what we cover in chapter 5 and 6. So I already copied from another computer, copied my work. So here I have all the libraries that we're using. You guys know it can also be found on the website bitesitebook.com or in our Moodle site. So I have all the libraries that I need, and the tutorial video is chapter 6. And chapter 6 goes a little bit more in depth about Hibernate, using more complex HTML elements as well. I wouldn't want to say complex, maybe some additional ones that we haven't seen yet. And also just a little bit about CSS. So I'm going to create a new project. We've been doing this already. Java web application. So may take a few more seconds since this computer I just installed NetBeans in this Mac Pro that I have. I may have I did install Tomcat as well. So I'm going to call it video tutorial 6. I'm going to set as the main project. It's going to be found on my NetBeans projects. If you're using Windows, you also have probably under documents. So here we got to make sure there's Apache Tomcat. Some of you may have the the Glassfish server as well. So we're using Tomcat. We'll leave the default here, which is Java E6 Web. Just the default. Next. We're not going to select any of this, but notice how we could have select Hibernate from here. Finish. And we'll just give it a few seconds. I'm not going to create everything from scratch. I'll do a few things. And you'll be able to go over the sample that I'll upload into our site. Please also remember that at some point I'll have everything uploaded in my main site, which is franciscoraulortega.com. All right, so let's start. I'm going to delete this index.jsp, and I'm going to copy a few files that we need. So you'll have a zip file with two folders, libs and tutorial videos chapter 6. So let's copy first under source. The web, we're going to copy index.jsp. You can drag and drop, or you can just right click, copy, come to web pages and paste. So this is just a simple JSP, also from the side of the book's website. So I only have a link to the controller that we're going to work on. Let's create the packages that we're going to need. So we're going to need a default package for sure. we also need a share package. You already been using this, and we'll create a chapter 6 complex persistent package. Make sure your spelling is correct and the casing is correct as well. So we created this package. These are the two packages that we're going to need. Now, we're also going to need here on the web our XML file, on the web INF, we're going to need our logs. While we're not using it for this homework, we're still going to add this. Now, you're welcome to keep using it. I think it's a great idea to log some of the information so you can check what's going on in your app. So we're going to right click copy, and now we're going to copy to web INF on the NetBeans and click paste. So we have our log file. That's all we need at this point. Also, my style, the CSS, that's a basic CSS file. So I'm going to copy this one. I made this one based on the book and with a few additions and changes, just to have a different example. So we're going to paste this on the web pages, so it will be at the same level as index.jsp. So we have our CSS file. We'll go over this in a few seconds. Our index.jsp. I'm going to delete everything that is commented out just to leave exactly what we need so it doesn't look messy. Remember, this is how you comment in HTML. This is a comment. So we'll save this. Now, I'll keep copying a few of the things that we're going to need. We need everything on the share folder. Copy. I'm going to paste it. We're getting some errors because we don't have the libraries yet. It's okay. We're also going to copy the Hibernate. Notice where we're going to copy the Hibernate. Copy. We're going to go into source packages. We're going to right click and paste, and you'll see it under default packages. We'll copy the JSP pages. All right, now we're going to copy all the files from complex persistent except complex data persistent. Paste. We're going to create a new Java file, Java class. We're going to call it complex data persistent inside of the chapter 6 complex data package. We're going to go ahead and add the libraries now. Now, before adding the libraries, what I want to do is I'm going to copy this folder libs just to make it easier. Go to NetBeans projects, and I'm going to paste it at this level. Now I'm going to come add jar folder. We're going to look for the NetBeans projects, libs, and I want to select all of them. You can try absolute path, relative path. Relative path is much better, and that's why I was putting it at the same level of the project that we're working on. For this particular example, just to make things easier, I'm just going to leave it as absolute path and select choose. We should be seeing the errors go away. We'll see if, yeah, I think it's fine. Now, let's review what we have. So we have the index.jsp. We have my CSS file. We have the logs and error chapter 4 log file. Now we have the web XML. I'm going to go ahead and open this XML. Here I have all the XMLs needed for the book, so I'm going to leave that for you. In case if you want to play with this. But this is the one that we're going to be working with, which is Complex Persistent Chapter 6, Complex Persistent Controller. Remember that you need to have a few things working, which is the listener. So this was covered in the previous chapter. It was covered a week ago, I think, or 2 weeks ago. So we need that. We also need the servlet for the log for JInit servlet. Remember, it has no mapping. And just our chapter 6 persistent, complex persistent. I'll have a copy of the web XML in the folder, which we'll call web.xml.simple, and it has just what you need for the project, and it's for this tutorial. But I'll include the web.xml with all the servlets for the book in case you need to work with any other example. So now we still have an error here in the controller helper. And yes, obviously we have this error here because we haven't created the bin. So let's go over this first. We have, first of all, the controller, the Java. I think I'm going to make the font a bit make it a little bit larger. So preferences, editor, formatting, fonts and colors. So just change the default to 18. See if that makes it better. And I'm doing it for the tutorial. You shouldn't have to do this in your house. So we have our controller which extends HTTP servlet. This is the most basic requirement for any servlet to work. Now we have the do post that calls the helper do post. Remember our controller helper, and the do get. We're using both methods. Now the form are going to happen with the post. So we went over in class the difference between the post and the get, and we explain when to use post and when to use get. If anything, go back to your notes, the PowerPoints, and the book, or ask me next class. But this should be clear by now. Now, the controller helper is similar to what we've been working on. Now, you have to see that this extends helper-based chapter 6. We'll go into that in a second. So you need to have this init hibernate in your controller. Now we're going to use an XML, so you have to make sure you have your hibernate cfg.xml. We'll get to that in a second. So you need to have this init hibernate. You have get data, so this returns the bin. Copy from session. So now here the difference is that we need to update the data, but also the checked and the selected. And when we see the helper base, I'll go over about this. But remember, these are maps. Now, here we have to use the reset nullable. And this was explained in class. and you'll see when this is going to be called. But we have to make sure that we set them to null any of the drop down the list boxes, which is the select multiple, any radio buttons, check boxes, any of those three, you will need to either set it to null, or if it's a numeric value, you can set it to 0 or -1, whatever works for you. Or for example, if it's a string, it could be an empty string. But if it's an array, set it to null. Remember that we're using arrays for list boxes, select multiple. We're using arrays for checkboxes. So for those two, you need to set it to null. So now our JSP location is the same. It's important to have /webinf/classes chapter 6 complex persistent for this tutorial. So why is that? Because we have our JSP under the webinf. So this is the path that is required. If you had it somewhere else, you would change the path. Remember that we have the JSP hidden from the user, so the controller is the one that's able to call them and display them. Now we have our edit button, remains the same. And now we have the confirm method has changed a little bit. Now we have reset nullable. So we call this first. Then we using our typical field bin from request. We pass the data, which is the bin. Set checked and selected. We pass data. And this is new one as well. So we have reset nullable, which is new, and set checked and selected. This is on the helper base chapter 6, which is what allows the maps to get updated. The map for all the selected items, which are the selected multiple, and all the checked items, which are the checkboxes. And then we just validate the data. And then the rest, the process method has also changed from your chapter 4, for example, that now we have an update DV. Now we have to update the data. So you call Hibernate helper update DV. Now, after that, we'll go ahead and get the data list here. And this data list really is a pointer to all of the data. And we set an attribute in the session called database. So we update it, we get the new updated data, all of it, and then we pass list to the session under the name of database. Our do-get remain the same, it calls the edit method. So one question will be why the do-get knows to call the edit method. And the answer is that since we're using the post for the form, then if it's not the form, then it must be either coming from a link, coming from the URL. So definitely it's the first time that they're coming. So we're going to show them the edit method. And then we have our do post here and for the form. So this is our controller helper. Review it, see what it does, look at the code. Now let's look at helper base chapter 6. First, it was important to note that helper base chapter 6 extends chapter 5, which extends chapter 4, right? That's where it ends. This helper base chapter 4 does not extend from the previous chapter. So sometimes you may be wondering where is this method from, and you have to look at any of those 3 helper bases to see where it is. Now, for example, field bin data, you're not going to find it in this helper base. So let's look at this helper base chapter 6. First of all, we're creating 2 maps. These two maps allow us to keep a map for each element, and within that element, another map which has the type and whether it's checked or not checked. And go into the PowerPoints because the figures will make it clear. So here we have the two maps. Remember that this tutorial is just to help some of you that have asked me how to get the homework done, and but it's not intended to explain all the concept that we have gone over in class. So now we have public helper base chapter 6. Now this helper base chapter 6 is a constructor here. So now we have set, check, and selected. So this is just an overload. And here, I'm not going over the method. You're not required for the test to know the inside, just know how it works, right? But this is what does and updates all the maps for the checks and the selected. Other important ones are get checked. So this return a checked and selected for the maps, which you saw already on controller helper being used. Do you remember where? So let's go back to controller helper. And here you'll see that we're already using the checked and the selected. But not only that, if we wanted to use it if we wanted to call all the checks and all the selected, now we can actually access the map using expression language with the JSP. So here it adds the checks, it adds the selected, and then it clears the map. I'm not going to go over all the methods. You can go to my office hours if you want to find out what they're doing inside in terms of the code, but you should by now have an understanding of how to call them and what is going to be the result of the function or the method that you're calling. So it's worth to look at helper base chapter 5. Here, for example, we it's added an error map, which you'll see that I use to display the errors of the validation. Something else that may be important to look at here, I would say just the error in itself. And then helper base chapter 4, you already should know this now. Initialize the logger. It has execute button method. All the methods you know by now. So we already have those three here. So we have our controller and our controller helper. We'll go back to the controller helper in a bit. But now we're going to create our bin. Now I'm going to copy a little bit from what I have. Well, let's try just to type it. I will copy the imports though, because I don't want to type all the imports. So let's just copy the imports. It's taking a bit to find the list. Wrong. So now I'm going to copy the imports. For the constraint, here you have the ones you're going to use, the not null, the size, the pattern, the max and the min. Max and min for the integers, there's a range as well you can use. The pattern for the regular expression. Size is going to be for arrays. For example, the select multiple, which is the list box, or the radio button, and not null as well to make sure that your values are not null. And here you also have set by attribute and attribute type. Now we're going to use hibernate. So the first annotation is going to be entity. Okay, letting you know that this is going to be a table in the database. Now remember what we have to implement it with this serialize out. Serializable. So we need an ID. This is going to be the ID for the table, right? And we're going to say that the ID is going to be a generated value. It's going to be a long. And private, we're going to set the set ID. We don't want the ID to be modified from outside. Now we add the members that we're going to need. So the protected, we're going to have a secret code. It's part of the example. We're going to have a happiness radio button. We're going to have a list of extra things. We also have just regular comments, but this is going to be using a text area. We're going to have grades, going to have commas double. And then we're going to have type of team, sport teams that you like. And also your favorite movies, we call it movies. That's all the instance variables that we're going to have. Now, of course, we need a constructor. And now let's do all the sets. So the sets, set secret code. What is it that we need? We need a string, text code, and here we add the code. We do the happiness as well. We're going to do all the setters first. In happiness, we'll do the set extra. So this is coming as an array. We'll do the set comments. We'll do the set grade. See how this is coming as we'll set the movies, the theme. It's coming as an array of string. And finally the movies, set movies. And we finish all the setters, and now we'll do the getters. So we created all the mutators. And now we'll do all the accessors. Now, for the sake of time, the accessors I'm going to copy as well, because otherwise it will take too long. So we'll just copy the accessors, and we'll go over them. So the first one is the get secret code. Now, I'm just making basic validation. You have to make more complex validation. First of all, making sure there's not null. So cannot be null. And also I'm adding the pattern, and I'm saying it cannot be empty string. This is for the secret code. For comments, I'm doing the same. Remember, we have not null and pattern. Now here's where it starts changing a little bit. We have, for happiness, well, it's not needed because happiness has radio buttons. I said that the mean value was going to be 1 and the max value was going to be 5, just to make sure that the values are coming in as needed. For now, I only have happiness 1, 2, 3, but if happiness is not selected, the radio button is possible not to be selected. If it's not selected, you'll give a message saying, please select the correct option for happiness. Now for the attribute, set by attribute, we have to set this to make sure that it's checked. We know happiness is going to use checkboxes. Radio buttons which can be considered checked, and then for grade we're going to use a combo box. Here we have grade, so we say it's going to be selected. So you either have checked or selected. If you're using radio buttons, combo list, or checkboxes, you have to make sure that you add the correct attribute type. So for the list box and the drop down box, those are selected and the other two are checked. Now for the get extra, I'm adding not null. That's the only validation I'm doing. But then here, because the checkboxes and the list boxes require some additional data, this Hibernate gives us the ability to create a related table to the specific record that we're going to be working on. So user 1 may have 5 movies, and we'll create a second table. So this user 1 will have a relationship with this other table that has 5 records. So there'll be a relationship from 1 to many in the tables. We'll see the tables as well. Now the element collection, we're saying this is going to be a collection of elements. Now here's the important thing, the index column. We saw this in our last class. The index column is going to be the extra position. You can name it anything you want. Here I name it extra position, position ID, and you say you want to start from 0, from 1, from any number you want. Usually 0 or 1 would be a good idea. And then this is just a regular one that says this attribute is checked. It's going to be checked or checkboxes. It could be radio button, but since for elements it's only checkboxes, so we know it's going to be checked. Now for team and movies, now for team I do the size. Here says the minimum 0, the max is 3. This means that you must not be able to select all the teams. You can select up to 3, right? It could be a min of 1, so that would be 1 team that you can select. Now here we have the size. I think it's better if I have it in top. It just looks more organized. Now we have the index column, set attribute. Now notice for team, movies, and extra, we're returning an array of strings. Now for the last one, we're doing the same thing without the size. So here I'm saying not null. So I just want to make sure that there's some data, instead of doing size min 1, max 2, if it has to be at least 1, then not null will work. Not null will also work for happiness. I just wanted to use a different min max approach here just so you see it. And this is all we need for our bean. Make sure you have the right annotations, and your bean is going to work without any problem. Now we finish our bean. Now, for your database, if you're in school or you have access to the internet, you'll be able to use your MySQL from school. It's better if you can work from the one in your computer. This is what I'm doing. Now, let me open MySQL. I'm going to open the workbench. And what I did was, first of all, in the home page, added a server administration. So I said new server instance. In this case, I'm using localhost. And I'm going to call it Mac Pro, which is the name of the computer. Continue. Ask for the password for root. So you continue. This is if you're doing it in the one in your house, in your laptop or computer. But if you're working with the one at school, you don't. You have to use the username provided to you and the password, which is your Panther ID. So I click continue. It's okay if I get the error. Continue, finish. And that's how I'll finish. I'm not going to create it because I already created it here. So I'll open this one. Now I'm going to add a user. This is if you're using the local MySQL in your computer, you can do all this. So here I'm going to say, for example, JDO001. The password is going to be 123123. So I'm going to give it all the everything. Apply. Schema privilege. I'm going to come here, choose JDO, add entry, any host, any schema, save changes. And I'm going to create a schema for JDO. So I'm going to come to the query screen on the left hand side here. And I'm going to say, I'm going to click the icon that says create a new schema in the connected server. And I'm going to call it JDO001. I'm doing this just to have something just closer to what we have in school. So now here I put my IP address. Could be 127.00.1. I'm actually using the one of my server, a private IP. And here I'm going to change and I'll say JDO001. So here's your instance, your database. Here I'm going to change the username, jdoe001, and passwords 123123. If everything was fine, it should work. We're going to just test the user here. New connection, test 2, jdoe001, password 123123. Click OK. Test 2 works fine. Now I should be able to see okay. Should be fine. Now, if you're not able to see the database after you have created the user, just go on under root and you'll be able to see it. So we finished, we created this configuration file. I'm going to copy a blank configuration file that I have. Copy. Paste. And I'm going to rename this one to sample. And this one you'll notice that it has no username, no password, just for you to change. So we have our bin, we have our controller, controller helper, we have our JSP. Now for the JSP, I'm going to let you go through it, you know, part of what you need to understand how it works, but you have the radio buttons, the checkboxes. I have my error messages with a class that I created on the style CSS. I'll show you now. So here, for example, I have all the movies that I want to create, all the movies that available, teams. Now, for the process of JSP, at the end, you can see here how we do a loop with the database. You can ask me in my office hours or after class a little more about this sample if you need help. So here we do a loop. We create a table. Actually, what I wanted to do before the loop is create another row with the name of the fields. So we'll do this, and we'll say secret code. Remember, you can select to close the TD or leave it open. So now we have secret code, happiness. The next one is extra. Then the next one is comments, grade, team, and movies. And we'll see how in here and heading you'll see how this looks, but I'll create a heading 1 that says database list. So here we'll have the entire database list that we have stored for all the users. Now, something important that you have to take into consideration is that if you change your bean, or if you want your bean to be created to the database, you have to come here to the servlet for chapter 6 and set the parameter of create to true. Once you have done it and it's working, set it to false so you can store the rest of the data. Otherwise, you only have one record. So here we have the true. So we're going to create the database for the user. We have everything we need. Finally, for the CSS, we have set different options, the color, the background color. But for the table and the rows and the cells, I selected to all the text to be aligned to the left and to have a border, thin solid black. Also, you can see how I define the headers. I define multiple definition headers, so we saw this in the book. Nested definition, TDH1, and I have a generic style. So here's, for example, when there's an error, we'll show a user error, will show red, italic, and bold. And here you have some pseudo style links for the links. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean and build. Remember that if it doesn't do it, you have to stop your Tomcat and then start again. And where's my output? View, Windows, output. It built successfully, okay. And now we're going to run it. Let's hope everything goes fine. Let me double check my index, my chapter 6. Okay, let's try. If it takes a while, you may be having trouble with database. Now, you may not be able to see the problem with the database until you hit process. So here I'm going to add secret code, accesses, and I'm going to say confirm. And we'll see that it has given me the errors, but it didn't give me the CSS was it's not working. So let's close this for a second, and let me check the CSS on the JSP pages. Okay, tutorial video 6, right? Not chapter. That was the other computer that I had it as under chapter. Tutorial video 6, which has to match, and it actually is video tutorial 6. So my process, my edit, I'm not using a Mac keyboard, so I'm having some problems there. Video tutorial 6. Okay, so now it's going to work. And now let's run it. Confirm. And now we here have the text in red. Now I'm going to have to modify the XML once this works. Otherwise, here we have all the data. Here we click process, and it's working, and I click edit or new, so I can edit this record. Now, in the XML, I have to go to chapter 6, change this to false. The other thing that I want to do is remove. I'm going to remove the ones that we're not using for this tutorial. I'll keep that one there, chapter 4, in case you still need it. I'll remove the ones from chapter 5. And I'll go ahead and remove chapter 7. And so now we have a smaller XML. Let's make sure that it's working. We're gonna add a password. I want hot fudge and whipped cream. Hello world. We're gonna get an A-. These are the 2 best movies. I have all the information. I can edit. I can process. Hello world. Now we have 2 records. And test. Confirm. Some errors. Type some text. Movie. Confirm. Edit. All the data is there. Confirm. Process. We have a list here. Now it will be up to you to make sure you add your data, your validations, making your site look really nice. This is just to get you going. So I'm going to go ahead and close here. Just remember that you have your homework 5-6 is going to be due soon. The semester is almost over. And just if you have any questions, please go to my office hours or email me. So just to recap, we created an application, a web application. We added the web XML. We have the logs, the index.jsp, my style CSS. We have our Hibernate here. I'll show you something about MySQL. And okay, let's go back to NetBeans. We have this package with the new bin that's marked as entity, our JSP pages, a chair and libraries. Finally, before we finish, let's look at this JDO. Now, when this I'm seeing it here as root. So let's see. Now here we have complex data persistent, complex persistent extra, movies and team. So let's do a select of complex data persistent and select asterisk from complex data persistent movies. And this is why you need the element collection annotation. So here we have the complex persistent, we have the data, an ID, a secret code. And here we have the movies. We can see for user 1, select those 2 movies, user 2, War Games, and user 3, Hunger Games. So it is late, so it's close to midnight, and I have forgotten one small but really important thing we commented out in the beginning. Do you guys remember in controller helper? So here we want to make sure and reset notable. So we reset all the ones that can be either select multiple, checkboxes, ready buttons. So that was our last change. We'll save it, and I guess it's time to wrap this up. Thank you so much. Hope this helps. And due to time, the editing of the tutorial is not gonna be the best, so you may notice a few parts that may be cut, but I think it will help you. I will upload the code as well. All right.